Hello, Team Flyer. How are you? Welcome once again to the Always Believer community. I mean, us community as well, obviously, because that's what we are, but the podcast more specifically. And I have the super pleasure in this beautiful Wednesday of ours to have a guest that was already on our show. She left us with a huge cliffhanger. She left us with a huge story. And when I was interviewing and having her the first time around, she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I derailed and I talked about this and that." And I'm like, "Hun, girl, queen." There she is giggling. Do not worry. And I do mean it. Don't worry, because that whatever you said within that hour was your truth. There was so much power and message behind your story. And the fact that you're able to come and have, like, we have another hour of your beautiful time to continue and have a part 2 of your story and just hear more about you. It's just, I'm super grateful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'm just grateful you wanted me back.
Really? Which you didn't. Let me give you another, again, quick introduction. So just in case if this is the first episode that you randomly happen to hear, she has been already. Her name is Lacey, and she's a
Hello.
TikTok queen of twins. That's for sure. You're so creative as well. So tell us a quick tidbit about you.
So, a quick synopsis is basically my husband and I dealt with infertility for about 4 to 5 years. We had some miscarriages here and there, and I dealt with a lot of emotions along that way. Finally got pregnant, and a pregnant that was successful happened to be twins. And in the midst of all that happening, we were living in Japan at the time. But once we got word of the twins, they told us we needed to go back to the States so that way we could hopefully have a safe delivery and everything. Unfortunately, no matter what our circumstance was, didn't have a very good delivery, and I resulted in being in recovery for a lot longer. My kids were, one was in NICU, one was in nursery, and my life was in shambles for a few days. But that's pretty much,
That's a good synopsis of your
yeah.
life. There you go. The last 5 years of your life.
In
That's
a
a nice
few
elevator
sentences.
pitch. I'm like, this is what I do. This is what happened to me. This is my story. So if you want to hear more about this particular case, we do have an hour-long special, basically, like I want to call it. Seriously, she has shared her story for our previous podcast. So please feel free to listen to that one before you listen to this one, because we are going to continue where we left off. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in this particular case about postpartum depression, because the first part of her story was, well, how to get pregnant, the miscarriages, going to Japan, going here, going there, etc. Like
Exactly.
nicely said in your synopsis. So let's dive in. And you were previously saying that you just gave birth.
Yes.
You had a really rocky birth story,
Yes.
which you did explain.
Hmm.
And you were just starting to say and come into terms into, you were feeling depressed. It was the first time you felt depressed within your pregnancy, and explaining to us a little bit. Now you can explain to us a lot more about which of the twins went where, how long did it take, kind of walk us through that procedure.
Yeah. Okay. So, immediately after the birth, they took Jude to, which Tommy was actually born first by a whole minute. so, so Tommy immediately went to nursery. Everything seemed fine with him. Luckily they were healthy weights. He was 4 pounds, 10 ounces. So, I mean, I got pretty lucky as far as preemies go. They weren't super, super preemie. I mean, you hear the stories where they're like 2 pounds, 3 pounds, and and my heart goes out to those women, because we obviously, they can kind of guess what they're going to be, but you don't know until they're
So
born.
they're born, of course. How old were they? Can you refresh our audience, please?
How what? I'm sorry.
How old were they? Like when?
Oh, with 36 weeks.
Thank you very much.
36 weeks. Yes, they were 36 weeks. And so we were luckily too, it wasn't like super, super early preemie. So I mean, I got pretty lucky as far as that all that goes. But yeah, so they took Tommy immediately to nursery and Jude had to go straight to NICU, which is obviously if anybody doesn't know what that is, that's NICU, which is the ICU for neonatal or preemie babies, all that. Um, so he had to go there specifically because he was having heart rate drops. So his heart wouldn't stabilize and it just kept dropping. And then when it would drop, his body would almost like forget to breathe. So it was kind of it, it was a mess at first because it was obviously all happening really, really fast and we didn't know what that meant. But so he immediately went over there and they got him stabilized. And then, as I said, I was in recovery. So my husband, bless his soul, was running from NICU to nursery to recovery to the waiting room where my parents and
Ooh.
my grandparents and everybody is, and then back to talk to doctors to see how everybody's doing. And then all around just making all these crazy rounds, I mean, continuously on multiple floors. It was crazy to say the least.
I feel like you when you were describing it, the typical sitcom or usually sitcoms, I'll say movies, but like you
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
dad running around, like you need like the music, you need
Yeah,
like
that was him. That was him. Literally, he was just, I mean, bless him because he was trying to make sure everybody had or needed whatever whatever
such
was
a
at that
trooper.
moment. But
Thank you, husband.
I know, thank you for being a trooper. But it was just, I mean, it was crazy for him to, and on top of everything else that was going on. But yeah, overall, Jude was in NICU for right at a month. So again, I do feel like we got really lucky. You hear the horrible, horrible stories where children are in there for months and months and months at a time. But we were able to stay at a hotel that was right outside of the hospital. And so that way, once we were discharged, we were able to actually be there because I was like, I don't want to leave him. And so we could go because we could actually go and see him at pretty much any time of the day. There was only certain hours that they blocked out where they had to do like feedings or had like doctors did their rounds, things like that. But you can literally go. I mean, I could have gone at 2 a.m. if I wanted to. So
Oh, that's really sweet though.
yeah, so that was so. I mean, it was nice that you weren't really restricted as far
Yeah,
as like your
exactly.
visits.
Which is, a blessing without a doubt.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I know that they don't really know what's going on, but I'm like, they don't, they don't know you're not there either. So I wanted,
Exactly. Like I
I
did
wanted to be
carry
there.
them. Like I
Right.
know.
Right. So, but the hardest thing, as much as I loved being in that hotel to be able to have the easy access to Jude, I it- a lot of my depression started to manifest in there. Um, I don't know if it was really because it just you can't really make a hotel into a home. I mean, you're living out of a suitcase, and I mean, we Tommy was in nursery for the same amount of time I was in recovery, so they just kept him there at the hospital. So we were released at the same time. So I'm also trying to be a mom all of a sudden, and
Yeah.
and it was
Which is a lot. I feel like once again, like well,
yeah.
my viewers know, at least up to today's date, of the said podcast that we're recording in, I'm not a mom.
Hmm.
So regardless of the fact that I know I'm not logically, so whenever I hear those stories, you're like, you become a mom instantly. Like you're not trained
Yeah.
for it. I
No.
mean, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm here to help somebody else
Right.
in a much deeper and constant level than I've ever had to do before.
Exactly. And it's not like it and it's so true. Like I know that you're like, oh, it's a full-time job, but it literally does not end. Like it is completely full-time and you go from, like you said, from just being pregnant or just not having kids in general, and then you go instantly into okay, this is an every hour, every minute, every second thing. And it's a really strange like flick to switch. It just really is because and in some women I'm like I mean I commend the women who can do it flawlessly because I was tripping over myself. Let me tell you. I did not know what the heck I was doing, and and God bless the people who were, out there trying to help me. It's just, but it's such a personal thing too, to try to like get in your own groove. And I immediately was like, I want to be on a schedule, I want to be that mom. And I mean, that didn't happen for months. But it's just, it's strange. And then but yeah, for me, I would definitely say that that's a lot of where the depression kind of started to amplify too, because I couldn't really, like, I never, because of also like our whole move, I never got that whole chance to kind of like nest, so I mean, they didn't even have a nursery in our own house, like they didn't have a room.
Exactly.
I
So
mean,
let's backtrack once more and
yeah.
refresh our lovely audience minds. You were in the middle. So I remember, because I definitely remember this, because it's a heck of a story. You went from Japan, obviously, all the way
Right.
back to the States because you were like, okay, we can't have the kids there. Let's go back to the States. And you did.
Right.
And
Right.
you were in the middle of trying to find a house
Yes.
because you were living with your mother-in-law,
We were living, well,
kind
briefly,
of.
but my mother, yes, my
With your
mom.
mom, sorry. With
Mhm.
your mom. And you're finding that you were trying to find a car, you're buying a
Yeah.
car, you're finding a place, you were in the middle
Yeah.
of all this, and then all of a sudden,
The boys are born.
exactly, literally, like instantly.
Yes. So that's like, I missed out on that whole, like, also, just
And
being
that,
able to make your house a home too. I
yeah,
don't,
exactly. I mean, I know plenty of circumstances that women have this feeling anyway, even if they do have
yeah,
the nursery and the
true.
house and they have everything. So it's not
Oh,
just
by
a
all
matter of
means.
that, without a
No,
doubt. It
no.
does add to your effect, I would think. It does add to your list, obviously, because I mean, coming from me that I've moved around endlessly because I started moving when I was a baby
Hmm.
till
Hmm.
literally last summer. So once again, literally all my life, and I got plenty of moves left in me, knowing myself. But regardless, finding or not even finding a home, but making a place a home,
Hmm.
it's such an important feeling.
Hmm.
And if I know that I'm staying in a place for a little longer than usual, I want to say longer than usual, usually is like 9 months or longer because
Right.
moved
No,
around a lot.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So if already as a person that you are an adult and with all those, like, I want to put my posters here, my pictures there, my Disney over there, as a baby, as a newborn, as a kid, like you need that as well, of course. Like that's
Hmm.
something that, you look for constantly.
Hmm. Exactly. And so I think like trying to create something like that in a hotel is nearly impossible. It really is.
Mm.
And so just being in this space that's not ours, Tommy being with us and him not having his own space, we're all kind of crammed together. And it just all kind of felt like it started to snowball a little bit. Um once once Jude was released, we had signed everything and actually bought a house, all this done from hospital rooms. But it is doable. Let me tell you, it's doable. But we found a house and we bought it, and so we immediately moved in as soon as Jude was released. We just moved whatever bags and everything we had down, and I all this while, I never, and this is, I mean, and this is some mom talk, but all this while, I never got the opportunity to even try to breastfeed with Jude. And Tommy would refuse to latch, refuse. So, which at first I was like, it's fine, I'll just pump, it's fine, like it's not a big deal. And I mean, all the while, I was already struggling to kind of make enough. Not to get too into it, but I mean, but it's difficult to breastfeed in general. I mean, it really is, and then let alone for two babies at
For
once.
two.
So I was like, I mean, I was like, it was like clockwork for me. I had to be on top of it, and it was, and I like, for lack of a better term, I felt like a machine. And
Mm.
just because I wasn't able to do it, it wasn't the blissful breastfeeding where you see the women who are very, excited to do I want to feed my baby. It was, I'm stuck to a pump because this is my only way that I can do this. And so I didn't have like joy in it. It just felt like I had to
Like another
do it.
chore, essentially.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, looking back, obviously, I do it all over again because it was for them. But at the same time, it's very draining to feel like you don't have, that you're just doing this because you feel like you have to. And it's not because you're having that connection moment with them, and it's
Exactly. Yeah, you're doing it. I get what you mean. That's the thing. I totally get where you're coming from
weird.
because once again, I know it's like I always try to not have my opinion stand out more than others because once again, I'm not a mom, so I'm never claiming like, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. No, because
No, no,
that's
no,
just
no,
like
but
why would I?
yeah,
But
no,
I
no.
do understand where you're coming from in the sense of like, ideally, I feel like
Mhm.
every woman before she's a mom, and I can vouch for that because this is me currently,
Yeah,
we think when we think of like breastfeeding our kids, it's going to be that special, intimate moment, that
and it's gonna
connection,
work, and it's
and
gonna
it's going to
work.
work, and it's going to work
Yeah,
the first time, the second time, and the fifth time, and some more,
exactly,
and that's it. That's what we grew up with as well. Regardless if
exactly.
it's media or not, I'm not sure if it's only media. I feel like it's more than that. I feel like it's just something that we just automatically know.
Mhm.
Hence why I adore your story, not because you've gone through it, of course, but because you're brave enough to say, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not all super pretty.
No,
Like,
it's not,
you
and I
don't
mean
latch on
no,
because you didn't want
exactly.
to. It's okay.
Exactly, and I'm all for breastfeeding. Absolutely, I think it is beautiful, and I think if you're able to do it, by all means, uh, don't knock yourself, girl, But at the same time, my kids are living proof, and I'm living proof that this is, I eventually I had to stop because it really took a toll on my mental health, just because I couldn't like physically, obviously physically, pumping every 2 hours is very draining physically. I
Yeah,
mean, it is.
exactly. It
I mean,
is.
that's, that goes without saying. but but it does an emotional and mental toll on you as well when it's something that you're not, it wasn't like I was doing it to create a supply and freeze it, or, or have it prepared for the next day or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. You were doing
It,
it just to
I was
literally
doing it
get to your for the
to
moment to get to them right there, right now.
yeah,
And that's
and
and yeah,
it got to a point where it felt very overwhelming because, if they're crying and I'm trying, I'm doing the best that I can. I'm doing everything I can. Obviously, I supplemented with the formula and everything, but it was just a couple months later that I talked to my husband and I talked to my doctor, and I was just and we kind of collectively made a decision. I told them I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore, and they basically all reassured me. They were like, Lacey, you did what you could for Jude while he was in NICU, and that was for me what really I felt like I needed to do for him, because I couldn't do anything else for him in NICU. Obviously, that was out of my control. They were taking care of him, but for me, I was like, if I can give him breast milk or something, this is me helping. You know what I'm saying? And this is me trying to be like, I'm here for you, kind of. But but honestly, it got to a point where I had to step away from it, and I really, and that was a huge decision for me, and it was something that in a way helped my PPD, but it also amplified it too in a lot of ways, because then I felt guilty, and I feel like moms really don't get heard enough. I feel like they don't get the time to just be mad or be sad or be pissed off, right, frankly, and I feel like in so many ways, because I didn't feel like I could really talk to anybody about that. Like, I love my husband, but in a lot of ways, I was like, you don't know though, you don't understand.
exactly. Yeah, of course.
And he would never not say, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to you," but it's hard to also talk about something when somebody doesn't really relate,
Yeah,
and
I agree. With every single subject, of course, there's
mm,
coming times that what I've explained previously, Team Flower knows, our community knows
mm,
about my struggles, and little by little, of course, I've come and been brave enough to just talk about them.
mhm,
I do appreciate people who do listen to me, regardless of their friends, therapist, husband, whatever.
mhm,
Um, but another thing completely is when I talk to people who have gone through the same,
mhm.
because you get each other in a different way, for good
Yeah.
and for bad, of course. So I totally see where you're getting that message and that answer, of
Oh
course.
yeah.
Hence why one of the reasons why I originally wanted to have you on was because of this, because you were able to speak up about this cause, not really a cause precisely, but this I
It's
don't
a
know what to
taboo
call it.
subject. It
Yeah, there
really
you go.
is, you
It
know,
really
and it,
is. It really, really is. And to where we're raised, blah blah blah. I can't speak. And to raise more. It tends to happen with our vocabulary in my that moment of your life when your brain is faster than your mouth. That's what happens.
well, I mean, being bilingual, I'm sure
Yeah.
amplifies that, I'm sure for you.
Yes, and I have a lot of false friends as well, as in like this word is really similar in one language than the other, but it means something different. And I'm like, wait, no, I didn't mean to say that. That's sorry. And we call it when we're teaching English, left high English, like those
Mhm.
false friends, because they're like, no, that does not mean that, even though the word's really similar. That's essentially what just happened to my brain. Sorry.
No,
What I
you're
wanted to
fine.
say is that I wanted to raise awareness
Mhm.
about this subject. Because give me a sec, because it's super duper important, of course, to show other moms before they're moms or
Yeah.
before even if they're pregnant, but in general, that it's not always going to be a bed of roses. And we're not
Mhm.
saying because your kid is 2 and they're toddlers and they're screaming in a store. We're just saying that postpartum side of things
Oh, yeah,
from the
100%.
get-go.
100%. And I feel like that's definitely something that it does need to be talked about more, and it needs the awareness. It needs the light shine, shown on it. It really does. And I think, for me, like I was saying before, I mean, because you're 100% right. I know my situation is kind of crazy in a lot of ways. But in so many ways too, the most flawless birth and the most wonderful, the baby being completely healthy, never having, mother is completely healthy. I mean, everything can go perfect, and you can still come out and feel all the same feelings that I've felt. And that's okay. And I feel like that women need to know that that's okay.
Yes, definitely.
You know, eh,
Definitely.
but at the same time, if you feel like that, don't hesitate to talk to somebody about it either. I really didn't talk to anybody about it for a while because like I said, I really let my guilt set in a lot of ways, because of the I'm choosing to breastfeed or choosing to stop breastfeeding, or pump, whatever you want to call it. But I'm choosing to stop, and it's not because it's, I can't, but it's because I mentally, physically, emotionally feel like I can't anymore. But it's the guilt of that, the guilt of the infertility beforehand. Like I really let my guilt control all the other emotions that I was already feeling, and I eventually just had to stop and go, Lacey, you're not okay, and it's okay you're not okay.
Yeah.
It's
And as
I
women, we need to
yeah
hear that loud and clear. We
yeah
feel so guilty all the time, and we guilt
yeah.
people all the time, which is a double-edged sword. Because not
It
only do we guilt ourselves, it's like we're still guilting, oh, you stopped breastfeeding, or oh, you're not gonna.
exactly.
You're like, what? What? Did I ask for your opinion? Did
Exactly. The mom community is, I mean, they're vicious. They're out there
yes.
ready to throw the first dagger, and it's scary. And I really didn't realize it until obviously I became a mom and kind of got thrown into it. But oh man, they will definitely I mean, it's and every mother is a case by case situation, and that no mother should be ashamed or
No.
shunned for anything. Like,
This is why it's very important for me to have you on, and I've already had a couple of cases like yours.
mhm,
And for me, it's that, like, your mothers who are raising awareness, is saying it's okay.
mhm,
We're not here to judge you or shun you or guilt trip you because you breastfed, you pumped, or whatever. You gave
mhm,
them a stuffed
mhm.
animal only when they were turned 10 and never before that. I don't know, something as extreme or different than breastfeeding, of course.
Right.
So, like, the fact that you have to be okay with what you're doing, I feel like that's the
Mhm,
first thing that you really need to know
mhm.
as a mom or not, as a person, as a human being that you are in this world. You need to be faithful to your actions and know your
Yes.
body and listen to your body and your
Exactly.
mind. And that's exactly what you did. You tried your best. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm not going to try and that's it.
Right, right.
But it's okay if you didn't. That's the thing, is like I have
Yes.
cases, including like my closest friends and family members who have never breastfed, who literally was
Mm.
like, oh, just go straight to formula, that's it.
And that's okay too.
Exactly. And they told me,
It's
like, whenever you
totally
get
okay.
pregnant, like if you just want to breastfeed or if you just want to formula or you just want to whatever, like that's up to you. Like this is something that it's up to you completely.
Oh, and that's how, and that's, and that was one of the biggest things that my doctor in particular, one of the things she told me that kind of resonated with me was a fed baby is the best kind of baby. And that doesn't mean formula fed, that doesn't mean breastfed. It's just as long as your baby is fed,
Fed.
it's okay. It's a fed baby, and that's fine. Everybody has their own situation, and that's their personal agenda. And so, if you feel like you can't breastfeed or you can't pump anymore because it is you are your number one point of everything for your child. And so, if this is something that is hindering anything on your day to day, that's okay for you to stop it, because at the end of the day, if it's going to make it a more worse situation, whatever you want to call it, for your children, I mean,
It makes
I,
no sense.
yeah, I
First, you
think
got
that
to take
that's
care of
the answer in and of
yourself.
itself.
Exactly.
Exactly.
There you go. And that's the point. Like with throughout all the,
Hmm.
my bilingualism coming in the way through this message, that's the point of the story, essentially. And my sore throat, as always, because I talk a lot. That's the point, that you have to
Yeah.
take care of yourself.
Hmm.
And we got to let go of that guilt as women. I
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know about men. I'm not a man. I don't know how they're feeling over here. But I know as women, we
Hmm.
do that a whole lot.
Hmm.
And you just got to go with the flow, as always. So.
I do know that there are cases where men tend to obviously have their own kind of form of a depression or anxiety
Mhm.
that kind of coincides with women and their whole entrance into fatherhood as well. And that's a whole another thing that obviously I just think that it's a subject in general, just any depression and mental health
Exactly.
awareness
Because the same thing
overall.
happens to them to some extent. I mean, they
Hmm.
don't
It's
go through the
a new
process of giving
thing.
birth, and that takes
Right.
a toll of, your body, mind, and everything.
Hmm.
However, they also turn into parents overnight in a click of
Exactly.
a button, basically. They're like, "Oh, I'm a dad
Exactly.
now." So I get where, like, I
Right.
do understand that.
Yeah. I
To
mean,
some
because like,
extent, because I mean, of course, you're still,
right.
you're human. You still have
Well,
feelings
well, and it's like, and like I was saying with our situation in particular, with my husband, like I said, when he was kind of going and
everywhere.
trying
Yeah.
to wear five hats at once, and be that person, that messenger for everybody. I mean, he was really mentally didn't know how to deal with a lot of it because especially, I mean, he later talked to me a lot about all of it because we kind of had to sit down and have just like a huge powwow about everything. But he did tell me, he was like, I didn't know what was going on with Jude. I didn't know what was going on with Tommy. He was like, I didn't know if we were gonna get your bleeding under control. He was like, I mean, he's like, I didn't know what was happening with the people that I care about the most in 12 different places.
And
And
all under
so
like 72 hours, basically, like
right,
one
right,
after the other,
exactly,
so it
exactly.
does, it is that, like,
Yeah,
talk about it, speak about it. It
exactly.
needs to be less of a taboo subject, because you got to feel all
Yeah,
the feelings, and you got to
exactly.
show all your feelings
And
without a
don't be
doubt.
ashamed at all for the way that you feel because it is something that so many undisclosed women go through it and don't come out and talk about it more. And the people that have, there's 12 million more that haven't, and so you're not alone at all.
Yes, and that's the thing. It's like, I feel like, I don't know how to explain this precisely, but even though I was surrounded always with kids and moms, because I've always
Hmm.
been, either a teacher or a foster mom or a pair or whatever, because it's not talked about,
Hmm.
you really don't see how calming it is.
Right,
And
right.
since I started the movement, I've had many different stories of different, like, areas and genres and stages of people's life. But when it comes down to this subject, that, like I said, I already had a couple more, you realize more and more how much it happens with
Hmm.
that frequency, not only miscarriages, but also like the postpartum depression. And thankfully and luckily, with, what happens with life, my husband, he's the oldest of three,
Mm.
and they're like 6 years apart, like from the first to the second and the first to the third.
Okay.
They're 14 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So he's good with kids, obviously. He loves them. He wants to be a
Mhm.
dad way before I ever did. But change diapers, he's all good with that. But one of the things when I was explaining to him about, talking to you and like, oh, this is this
Mhm.
case and that case, like I remember my mom, like I was already 14 years old. Like I
Mhm.
remember her going through that stage. And it's difficult. And through that moment, he was telling me other examples and whatnot. And I'm like, that is so interesting because if you don't,
Mhm.
right now, up to now, better said, if you didn't see someone going through it firsthand,
Mhm. You
you don't
probably don't even
know
know.
it exists. So this is why I
Mhm.
was like, oh, wow. Okay, let's talk about this. This needs to be talked about
Well,
because,
and it's definitely something that isn't super. I mean, like you said, if you have like a first person, loved one that you're definitely seeing, I mean, there's probably some telltale signs that you don't even know are happening until a little later. But then there are even moments where, depression doesn't always look like the depression that movies show it either, you
also
know?
true. And I feel like
Mhm.
this is what right now we're doing is I've also like mental illness is an illness.
Exactly.
Like hormone, like with me, I have gone through like depression and anxiety, and you see the symptoms
Mhm.
there. They're not like TV by any means, because if you ever
Mhm.
seen me when I was depressed, I was the happiest, most cheerful thing around.
Mhm.
But I can see a huge difference of, because right now if you do see me, I'm still the happiest, most cheerful around, but there's a huge
But it's
difference.
different. Yeah,
It's
it's totally
completely
different.
different, and that was like in my particular case already 11 years ago,
Mhm.
which is incredible to say that. But I mean, I bounced back here and there with it, but my biggest point was 11 years ago, and I do feel the difference. So you do
Yeah.
pick it up here and there, these
Yeah.
these signs, and
Mhm.
it's something that I also love to talk about because it's mental illness and it's important. And then I said
Yes.
something quickly about hormonal imbalance. Because of my hyperthyroidism, I have side effects that I can't control really my emotions sometimes because
Mhm.
of that lack of hormones. So it's frustrating because you can't really control it, and you're just like, it's something that takes kind of over your mind and your body.
Oh, yeah. For
And I'm like,
sure.
that's what it looks like as well. Like it looks like many different
Exactly.
things, and just because you have I don't know, like a picture perfect idea in your mind of what something looks like, it's not necessarily. So that's what we're doing right now, with you talking
Exactly.
about it, with me doing something like this, with all of us coming together and kind of breaking that stigma and be
Mm.
like, yo, this
Think
is
these
what it is.
these kind of movements are super important. They really are.
Exactly. And then I wanted to circle back really quickly what you were saying with even if your pregnancy looks picture perfect, not only looks
Mhm.
it, feels it,
Mhm.
and you're super healthy, you can still have the same symptoms. And I feel like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
something important,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm sure that people who have had good health, I mean, good health and like good pregnancies and whatnot, whenever they felt this way, I feel like it's sometimes a little bit worse because they're like, it comes out of nowhere, essentially.
Right. Right. I think a lot of people forget to, at the end of the day, a pregnancy or a birth, I mean, creating a human in general, it's such a biological phenomenon that, because it's obviously first and foremost biology, it's your body goes through changes, not only just physically, but I mean, your emotions and your hormones and your chemical levels, all that's going to change. And especially in a situation, they say a lot of times, like for instance, if you have a cesarean, C-section versus a natural birth, they say a lot of women have it more difficult as far as your emotions and your chemical imbalances with a cesarean, because your body doesn't have the actual act of birthing, so you're kind of like in a, not to get you graphic, kind of quote unquote, making the baby come out
Yeah.
versus the natural movement of it all. And so your body kind of goes in almost like a whoa, 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 wait a second, like I'm supposed to just, now I'm a mom, I mean, so it's like it's a weird, your body doesn't know how to catch up just yet. But even through the natural birth, your body still has those chemical changes. And so it's like, I think people forget a lot of that because your body just biologically also has to change, that also means that your chemicals and your emotions and your hormones, all that's
They
going to
come
change.
together. They do come hand in
Yeah.
hand, and people do forget
Yeah.
that because as a person who, like I said, I go through this,
Yes. You're like,
and
even like you said, even not quote unquote being a mom yet, but I don't think you give yourself enough credit, because I think even fostering, you're a mom. You're already mom.
I feel like I've been wearing that hat probably for longer than I give myself credit for. You're right. Yeah, the
But you
foster.
totally understand though.
Yeah, I mean, being a foster mom, like that's the thing. I never went through the experience. It hits me differently because I did explain to this
Mhm.
before offline. I mean, off the air, I guess. Um, that with my personal effect with hyperthyroidism, it's like if I'm quote unquote, like what the doctor said, quote unquote, always pregnant, in the sense of
Mhm.
my hormones are literally, I
All
can't
over.
control them. So sometimes, I
Mhm.
mean, now they're controlled because I take a daily pill and I'm better. But
Mhm.
in the moment that they were the worst, I started crying. I was really angry and nothing was wrong. Like I was like, I'm fine. Like I'm happy. It's just like all these sorts of emotions. And what my metaphor that I always use is like if they were having a party and all of a sudden you brought like, I feel like I'm describing Up actually. No, not Up, not in the movie Up. Wrong Disney movie. Inside Out.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
I feel like it's that, but instead of happy, like not only happy, anger, like shy, like all those sorts of feelings, but you include like, I don't know, rage and
Mm-mm.
sadness. And they're just having a
Yes.
party in my body, and you're like, what in the world is happening? And among other side effects that you can typically get when you're pregnant, like hot flashes and cold bits, a little
Mhm.
bit of everything. So a little bit of that, and like you said, I like the youngest child I've ever foster, which is, she has my heart without a doubt. She was 3 days old. She was found when she was 3 days old,
Oh
not
my
wanted. Like the
gosh.
story, like I'm not gonna get too deep, but she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
found, kind of quote unquote thrown away,
Oh.
and no one could take her in the facility. No one could take her, and I'm like, she's mine. She's mine. She stayed with me till she was 15 months, 16 months, more or less. And then
Oh
she got
my
adopted. She's
goodness.
happy, she's fine, she's healthy, she's good. But yeah, so I that was the earliest, 3 days old, and then after that usually it was about 3-4 months onward. I
Oh,
like babies.
wow. Um,
Usually I got them when they
oh
were little.
man. Oh, that's
I know, right?
I'm like my heart.
That is, it's, yeah, exactly.
Being a
So this
mom
is,
softens you.
yeah.
So I'm like,
Like, why would you do that? Like, I don't know.
oh,
That's another thing I'm a huge advocate for, fostering and adopting and all that stuff, of
it's
course, like we talked
beautiful.
previously, because there's so many kids out there. So thank
Hmm.
you for that compliment, and it does mean a lot. Like, and I always say I'm not claiming something I'm not, so I don't know what's it like,
I,
but
I, it's okay though. You're in the community, whether you think you are or not. I'm, if, if, if there's ever a doubt, I'm just dubbing you in.
exactly. It's like, I'm Lacey approved, okay? And if you want to hear a birth story, come follow the podcast, and there you go. I'm really approved. She has twins. Have you heard her pregnancy story? Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Um. Oh god. I love talking to you so much. It's so,
I love being here. I really do.
just, it's so joyful, and I love the fact that my next sentence slash statement slash question in general was going to be, we're sitting here laughing about it and taking it
Hmm.
lightheartedly because you've gone through it, because
Yes.
it has been some time. Your babies are already one. You, you know, my next question, to be even more precise, was how long, more or less, did you feel that depression? Do you still feel it now? How did you maneuver through it as well,
Hmm. Of course, of course. I by no means feel cured, if for lack of a better word. Um, but I have no shame. I do take a daily medication to feel better. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I things have definitely slowed down in that department for me. I feel a little more in control of my day to day. I have my moments though. They're very much, and that's obviously just a normal, I think, human reaction that is going to happen regardless of, PPD or not, or PPA or any of that. I think, you're just going to have moments where you're like, oh my God, regardless of any of that. But, having the predisposed, depression and anxiety and everything that came with my postpartum, I do feel like a lot of that has, kept those situations a little more amplified for me. But at the same time, I would say when it was the heaviest, it was probably a good, 6, 7, 8 months or so. I wouldn't say I got better, I guess, I'm saying this in quotations, within just the last couple months, where things have kind of felt a little more emotionally stable, for me. But it is a daily thing for me, and it really, I physically, it's weird, but I can physically feel myself at some points where I'm like, okay, my anxiety is like pushing through this roof right now, and so it's like, it's weird how much I feel like I've come in tune with myself and my body and my emotions now that I've recognized, like, okay, this isn't normal, but it isn't bad. I know that this is going on, and I've had to kind of get into that mindset once I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be a depressed mess. I'm going to make this better for myself and my kids. Um, so because of all that, I kind of feel like I know when things are weird and things are starting to happen to me. But
which is definitely a wonderful feeling to have, because
it
I've
is.
gotten regulated. I know,
You
much
know,
as I
it's
already see the difference of me 10 years ago being depressed, now
mhm,
seeing the
mhm,
difference of when I was at my all-time low with hyperthyroidism and I was just a complete mess,
mhm,
to say one of the many words we can say here.
mhm.
Um, you know what's coming, it feels different, and that's because you have been working on yourself, and that
Exactly.
you see the
Right.
difference, which is good, which is a big step.
Right. And I, and I own that. And I will sit here and I will say, you know what, I'm daggum proud of it. Because honestly, I feel like I've come a really long way, because I mean, there were times I didn't get out of bed, and I didn't, and they would be, crying, and I just would have to hand them over to my husband or my mom, and I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do it. I'm not good for them. Like, they don't need me because I don't know what I'm doing, and I mean, I don't want to do wrong. And so it's like, it was just, I came from that to where I am today, where I mean, I'm up, I'm doing everything, I'm making breakfast, I'm on top of everything, I mean, and those are little steps, I know, and a lot in a bigger scheme of it all, but it's something that I feel like anytime you're going through postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, and even if you are doing the smallest step of, I'm going to get up and wash my hair, that is something that should be praised, because too many situations have happened where they're not given that kind of recognition of improvement either, and then they've digressed back to where they were, or god forbid, worse situations have happened because of it. And I think, you also need to be shown that, you're doing well, and it's okay that today is only this much, this very, very small much better, but it's better, and that's all that matters,
That is
and
all that
so.
matters. That's something that also I want to bring it back in with women in general. And I know I'm the
Mhm.
first person who does this, and I'm doing whatever I can to fix it,
Mhm.
is we have to take our wins. And
Yes.
I don't I don't
Yes.
I don't do it. I feel like, one is my personality. I've gone through so much hardships that, for me, from what I've the feedback I get from my husband and people who really know me, is that you think what you do is normal. You think
Mhm.
the pace that you do things, and you think that, your way of living is normal, where it's not, because it's not. Like,
Right.
I have a different pace because I had to put myself, like, I had to go through so many things in order to make myself who I am today.
Right.
And for me, regardless if it's a fact of I can start over overnight, like I've done it a million times, I can do it again. Like, for me, it's something
Mhm.
easy. For me, waking up at 5 to start my own business and work every day on my own, and like have that discipline to continue, to literally right now anything else in between. like you said, I don't give myself enough credit. You literally just said it without quote unquote knowing me as well, or
Hmm.
so well, sorry. So what we need, and once again, I'm including a big we as women and men, take those wins and give ourselves that credit. Because if we start doing that from the get-go, those moments will be a lot easier, without a
Oh yeah.
doubt.
Oh yeah. And I think that if we start doing that from the get-go too, like you're saying, it makes those even bigger moments even more special because you know that you've been working towards that, and I it's just it's such a it's I know we've obviously talked so much about postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and honestly, and I can't thank you enough for trying to help me get like a platform with this because it really is something that should be expressed more and talked about in the open because it's so real. But
Exactly.
but you're so right. It's such a more generalized subject too, just mental health awareness and that it's okay that you're not okay, and
It's a lot to do with that. And then my next quick tidbit of a question is like, do you
yeah.
feel like through this platform, any
Mhm.
platform, through just talking to someone one on one, do you think if you talk about the symptoms a lot more of those
Mhm.
moments that you're like, there was days I couldn't get up, there was days,
Mhm.
do you think that's a change that needs to happen as well? Because one thing is
Oh
talking
yeah.
about it generally, another thing is really diving in specifically. Would you be like, is that something that you see yourself, not only yourself doing, but just in
Mhm.
general, for this to be even more of, or less of a taboo subject?
Oh yeah, by all means, yes. I definitely think symptomatic things are something that should definitely be more talked about, and especially because I mean you can go to any kind of website you want to, and it'll say, oh, you're sad, you're crying, or you're angry, you're yelling, and I'm like, okay, yeah, those are definitely all symptoms. Don't get me
But
wrong,
what is it? Like what, like
but
this is what, that's what we need
hmm
to get to the bottom of. And something that for me
exactly.
it's very interesting to know, not
Hmm.
only as a listener, to be honest, but also to be more aware of what are the specifics. And this is, you're completely right. Every time
Well, and it's
I look it up, not, or like the subject comes up, like, oh, you cry, you yell, I don't know, you don't feel like you want to get up.
yeah.
It goes beyond that.
Exactly, because I mean, well, and you said it perfectly earlier, where you said that you came out being so happy and bubbly, but at the end of the day, too, that was the moments you were most depressed too, the 11 years ago and everything, and that was a lot of it for me too, because obviously people were excited to see my kids, and I was, oh yeah, I'm happy, but I'd come home and I couldn't sleep. I had such horrible insomnia, and that is something, I still struggle with. Like I have to take like a melatonin type thing to kind of like calm myself because that's another big thing that I don't think is a huge symptom. It really is, especially with like PPA with postpartum anxiety because your mind just does not stop. You're constantly worried if I go to sleep, something's going to happen to my child. Or if I go to sleep, I'm not going to be able to get up. Or what if I don't wake up? What if they don't? What if something? I mean, it's like it does not stop. And so like that's another huge thing that unless you're in that person's house, how do you know they're not sleeping? You know what I mean? I mean, so it's like depression doesn't always look like the person that walks through the door with a black hoodie and no makeup and unwashed
Hmm.
hair. That shouldn't be the view of depression because that is definitely not what it looks like. It could be the Barbie doll that walks through and has the perfect everything to your eye, but
Exactly.
um
Yep, I couldn't say it better. Without a doubt. So definitely those symptoms, to be a bit more open with
yeah.
them. And through raising awareness, also raising, moments, like healing moments
Mhm.
of not only for ourselves but for others. And I feel like it's something super useful and important that we do need to talk about a lot more.
Mhm.
Thank you. Like, I couldn't thank you more to just say, this is what happened to me. This is my story. I'm
Thank
owning
you.
it.
Thank you for giving me the time to share it. It's been something I feel like it's been a long time coming and honestly, in a lot of ways this has helped with my healing because as I said, it's not an overnight thing. It's something I still work on and feeling relieved by kind of getting a lot of this off my chest. And I think that this is
That's
something
super
that you
important.
should
And I
do.
love I love that you can talk to your friend Robin about it, probably, and obviously.
Hi, Robin. Shout out,
Hello,
Robin.
Robin. We miss you already, Robin. For those who don't know Robin, go back to the first episode, please, of Lacey, because we mentioned her a lot
Just
and
made
we
her
love her.
cameos.
Exactly. But apart from talking to her and talking to your husband, of course, and things like that, it's also ridiculously nice to hear that, not because it's my platform or our community or the Always Believer, you're able to talk about it to a public,
Mhm.
and within that you feel release,
Yeah.
and that's super important for you, and that's super special because that's just like, and I take it take it personally. That's not the right sentence. I think I take it. I don't know how to take it, but what I'm trying to say is I understand you once again, because that's what happens when I talk about my depression and my sexual abuse. It's like the fact that you're able to talk to not only your husband, but to like literally that and feel like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right, this is good, and this is the feeling that we all need to have.
Exactly. Exactly. And we
Definitely.
all deserve to have too.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Robin, hi. I'm stealing your best friend. No, we can borrow her. Don't worry.
We'll share.
Exactly. It's like the boys, they need to share. She's getting so
Um,
much screen time.
I know, I know. Oh my goodness.
um, we got the very few questions, not few questions. We got a few more questions, not that
Okay.
many, like 4 more that we could do this time around. What word of advice would you give people who are going through it, who have been there, who, etc.?
A word of advice I would give is definitely if you at all feel off, just at all feel off. And as you know, as we've sat here and talked about agnostically, just it doesn't, it's not necessarily what you may think it is, but if it's anything just doesn't feel right, please seek out help. It's okay to talk about, like, I just don't feel like I want to eat or something, or this doesn't, I'm not hungry, or I'm not tired, or something's going on. I mean, just the littlest things that may feel off is something that please, please, please talk to somebody, because you may very well be experiencing something that you don't know you're experiencing. That's a lot of my stuff is in the beginning, I didn't really know until everything started just happening at once. And so don't let it get to that if you can help it. But also if it's something that you've dealt with for this past year, I mean, it's never too late either to talk to anybody. So by all means, for me, I feel like this is what I've kind of coined up in the midst of my depression and anxiety, and it would be, it's an ugly situation. It's a very ugly situation, but you find you're pretty, if that makes any
That's a
sense.
beautiful statement, though, right
You
there.
know,
Find
um,
your pretty.
yeah.
I love that.
Well, thank
I
you.
love that. What do you do every day, if you can,
Yeah,
for self-love?
self love. Well, first off, I wash my face, and I know that sounds so
No,
like
take your wins.
I'm
Like,
like,
you
yeah,
enjoy
and
your
that's.
wins, and no matter how quote unquote small you think it sounds, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. It's your win. It could be
I'm
a
like,
freaking mountain to you washing your face.
also, I'm like, I know that sounds so strange, but I'm like, I love to wash my face, but literally, like, being able to wash my face first thing in the morning is something that makes me feel very like I can take today. And so I know it's a little step, but it is something that makes me feel very refreshed personally. So that's my number one in the beginning of my day, self love. Another thing I do is I take at least an hour for myself, um, and just I spend it on myself, specifically on myself, whether
And
that's.
yes, ladies and gentlemen, she has twin
And
boys.
I do have twin boys. And now, with that being said, because I have twin boys, my hour is not exactly the same hour every day. It could be during their nap time. It could be obviously at, 10 o'clock at night before I'm going to bed, whatever the case may be. It may be early in the morning before anybody wakes up. I mean, but I try to always take at least an hour. And honestly, every day it's a little different. So I just do whatever I got to do.
So we're over here talking about the other moms handling so well. The fact that you give yourself an hour, I feel like that's so freaking incredible. You need to be proud of that. You need to own it because
you
we
know what I
all
am? I'm owning my hour. It's my me.
exactly like
Like right now,
gosh,
this is my me time.
which I feel really honored. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, like, have you met the superwoman? My gosh, love it, Miss Lacey. What
Yes.
are 3 words to describe you?
Oh, 3 words to describe me. I would definitely say I'm a caricature. I love to sing, dance, act, that kind of thing. So I will put something on if I need to. So I love to be a character. So character, I think, would be a fun word. Another thing is I'm gonna give myself this word because I feel like I deserve it. But I would say I'm determined because at one point I wasn't, and I am now. And so it's something that I feel like I've really worked for, to I never didn't give myself as much credit before. And in a lot of ways I still don't. But I'm very determined to do the things that I want to do now in this life. And when before I don't think I gave myself the time to own that. And so now I'm determined. I'm determined to do whatever I want to do when I want to do it. And then the third word, I would just honestly say a word to describe me would be a mother. I mean, and that another one is just because I earned it. I earned being a
You
mother.
mother effing earned it. Never better said.
That's it. I've earned it. That's it.
Once again, for those who have no idea what we're talking about here, go to the first episode and learn how she mother effing earned being a mother.
Oh yes. And I'm one tough mother, let me tell you.
Oh, I can I can vouch for that. Goodness gracious. Wow. Second to last
Oh,
question. Here we go. What are you grateful for?
oh wow, what am I grateful for? Uh I'm grateful for, and this is a little bit off topic with it, but I am grateful for my grandfather's advice that he always gave me. And the one thing he always told me that really resonated with me and has since even carried me to this day is something he would always say is it's just a bump in the road. And that is something that really kind of helped me along, especially with my PPD, with my infertility, with everything that has kind of got me to today and thus far. Um, I've even in your moments where you feel like this is the worst moment of my life, and in a lot of ways it may very well be. At the end of the day, too, it is just a bump in the road. It's going to get better. It might not look like it, and you may need the help to make it better, but that's okay too. But at the end of the day, it's a bump. You'll come over it. You'll overcome this whole situation that you feel like you're drowning in. And so I'm grateful for his advice and just knowing that he's here watching my kids and me. That's what I'm grateful for.
That's so sweet.
I know. I'm like I'm
It's like
trying
I'm
not to get
trying not to
emotional.
cry. Exactly. I'm like trying not to cry. You, me, and our whole audience right now. It's like that's so sweet. Because
Oh,
she talked a little bit about her grandfather in the first episode. For those who haven't heard just yet, for some reason, at this point of the episode, in.
if you really haven't gone at this point, we've referenced it so much.
So we know what he means to you, of course. That's
Mhm.
really super special and touching, the fact that you were able to link those two together. And once again, one of my favorite things is having that message and having um people in this community that have a message, I just want to say, that want to leave that legacy. And that's exactly what you're doing, one way or another,
Thank
by
you.
sharing it and being the powerful, super wonderful, lively, bubbly, real, and honest woman that you are. And I congratulate you every freaking
Thank
step of the
you.
way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Our last question is the same one as always. Where can we find you?
Well, you can definitely find me on TikTok, and that's at Mama Heathen. My last name is Heath, for those of you who don't know. So it's a play on my last name, but also my children are heathens. Yes, it is at Mama Heathen. Also on Instagram, I'm also at Mama Heathen, but it's Mama Heathen 84. So those are my two biggest platforms that I kind of really dedicate to. So
Exactly.
those,
You are insanely talented as well and creative on TikTok. That's how I found you. And I
thank
fell in love
you.
with you because it's ridiculous. Not only do you post amazing and beautiful pictures of your two boys,
Thank
you're
you.
creative while doing it. So, because some of them were like, oh my God, so cool and so cute. Like, how can you think of these things?
I think
Like,
I think I'm funnier probably more than I come across, but in my head everything sounds super funny and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so clever." And
I love
but
it. And I
I
know, and you have
appreciate
a
it.
huge following on TikTok, so I'm pretty sure
It's
that they, I don't know what count you're on right now, but you have a pretty,
way more than I ever thought I'd be. Let's put it that
exact.
way.
So, we're having you on again. You already know that you're part of our community even more so.
I would love to come back as many times as you would have me. So
We're
thank you,
going to
thank
talk
you.
about deep stuff. We're going to talk about not so deep
Yes.
stuff. We're going to go from topics like this one. We're going to talk about Japan. We're going to talk about Disney. We're going
Yes.
to talk about tattoos,
Yes.
all the fun stuff. Seriously, though. Like, thank you once again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, there you go. There you have it, Team Flyer. That's another episode. What's it called? What did I say before? A special with
Yes.
Lacey, part 1 and
Yes.
part 2.
There you go.
So make sure you can catch her. It's all linked down below as always, and make sure to catch us, of course, through thealwaysbeliever.com, originally speaking, so of course, but we have Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I'm not as creative or popular or whatever as her in this particular case, but I always tell you TikTok because I have so much fun doing it, and that's what counts. You have to have fun doing what you do.
Exactly.
So yeah, feel free, the door is always open. You can come and talk to us, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.